So, this is it, huh? This is how I'm gonna start things off. Oh boy, okay. No name, nobody, taking on one of the largest issues facing gaming culture today. Alright, let's do it. Wait, no. Before I start, I should probably lay some groundwork, right? I mean, what will anything I say even mean if I don't ground it in some kind of context? Well, I suppose the first thing I should say is I love Dark Souls. I've beaten it more than once, so that makes me a totally legit gamer guy, right? Oh my god, that's so stupid. Okay. This video is gonna be the Dark Souls of, you know? No, I'm not even gonna finish that. Okay, okay, for real this time. Alright, here's the truth. I'm not some kind of amazing, God touched elite pro or anything, but I do love video games. I love them as an art form, as a culture, hell, even as an industry. I think it's great that people can make a living making video games. I don't so much love the uber capitalist side of the industry, but it has less to do with this topic directly. Now, obviously, there is some effect that the EAs and Activisions and Ubisofts have on game criticism. They have the embargoes, they dictate terms. Depending on who you ask, hell, they'll even pay the critics. Yeah, I think that's better. I think let's actually start there. This is the smallest part of the problem with game criticism as a whole, yet it is surrounded by the most mystique. I understand, of course, it's human nature. The less we understand the true nature of something, the more we are prone to invent reasons that suit what limited perspective we do have. And in the relationship between game critics and publishers, there are so many unknowns. Perhaps too many, even? If you don't understand what I'm talking about, perhaps an example will help. I love cryptozoology. Yeah, weird turn, I know. Stick with me on this one. The idea that there are still plenty of creatures that people are seeing but haven't entirely caught up with is absolutely enchanting. For example, the furry forest brother himself, Sasquatch. Depending on who you ask, Bigfoot is either an escaped gorilla population living in North American forests, some kind of prehistoric hominid, or a branch split in the family tree. And then you have the supernatural, teleporting, dimensional traipsing Bigfoot that can mind speak, call down flying saucers, and even themselves are aliens or anywhere in between. Keep in mind, we don't even know if this animal is real. And yet, even in the absence of such obvious confirmation or evidence, we still have quite easily managed to create so many stories and attribute so many properties to this unknown creature, and the same thing is happening with game criticism. We don't know the full nature of the relationships of some critics and publishers, so in an attempt to fill in the blanks, we try to assume, and that is a problem. I do think transparency is good, and if the gap between hobbyists and professionals is to ever be bridged, this is merely step one. So, just to be clear though, the timing of this video is not coincidental. I am here because of the Last of Us Part 2 discussions. The actual game itself, mind you, doesn't interest me. I don't like cinematic games, i.e., games that take their cues from movies, with an overabundance of cutscenes, QTEs, button prompts, etc. The genre doesn't interest me, and The Last of Us franchise that's just what it is. Imagine going to a theater and watching someone turn pages and narrate to you for 2 hours. That sounds like a terrible movie, yeah? Well, it's the same concept here. Obviously, if you like it, you're allowed to, because you needed my permission for whatever reason. Kind of weird that I need to give that disclaimer, but anyways, back on topic. So, I may not be one of the types of people who play these games, but I am a writer. And the decision to make you play as Joel's, and spoiler alert, murderer, is as brave as all get out. Yup, I fully support it. I'm not even going to tell you whether I think he was right or wrong in the first game. It doesn't matter. Just this choice alone is just brilliant. Say what you will about the execution, and trust me, many have. I don't care really so much about the execution, so much as that they tried something new. I mean, think about it. Think back to so many reviews that you've seen or heard so many people say that a game story is just lazy or paint by numbers. Of all the things you can say about this game, you can't say those two things, and that is commendable in an industry that is so risk averse. No, I will defend their right to do something new. It's not even like a Game of Thrones kind of thing where, oh, themes are for 8th grade book reports. No, they're actually trying to build off of the last game and try to show that this world is not just Joel and Ellie, and that's a good thing. Of course, it's not just me. The other hot takes have been flying in thick and fast. Some people love the game, lathering it in tongue baths and other lewd forms of sexual favors, while others see it fit to cast into the fire where it shall burn for all time. In the middle of these two extremes, battle lines have been drawn, the respective armies encamped, keyboards locked and loaded, critics and their aforementioned tongues, and gamers with their white-hot Mount Doom rage. As is common for the internet, in a bid to talk past one another, the nuance is lost in favor of these blunt force insults. So let's just do this properly, like adults. What is criticism? What is its purpose? Why are critics so different from average players, whom I will henceforth refer to as hobbyists? So, part 1, A and B. What is criticism and what is its purpose? So, we're going to go full on basics here. What is criticism? What does it mean to offer a critique? In pursuit of this question, I have found quite a few definitions and lenses from which I can attack this question, but I want to kind of offer up my own understanding of what criticism is by reverse engineering what it is a critic does. So here goes. The job of a critic, according to me, is having an opinion and the skill to articulate it concisely. So it should follow that criticism is someone's opinion. Pretty basic, I know, but the saying everyone's a critic isn't just a derisive method of shrugging off criticism, it's also true. Everyone is a critic. That is why we like to discuss things, and that is why we create art, because it generates discussion. Opinions, even. Dangerous, I know. But let's hear from some more hoity-toity types, shall we? In his abstract of the work, The Nature of Critique, Political, Not Epistemological, by Torben Beck-Derberg, he establishes two schools of critique, epistemological and political. He does dig a layer deeper, citing a sub-school within the epistemological thinking, but essentially there are two. The way he separates both is as follows. Epistemology, based types of critique, such as ideology, the sub-school mentioned previously, aim to peel layers of manipulation away to get at the real thing. That's interesting, no? I mean, think about it. Peeling off layers of manipulation. Depending on how you interpret that, that can mean so many things. But we're going to tuck that away for now, I think. And instead, head all the way back to ancient Greece. So now you know we're getting serious. Because we're about to cite Plato. And Plato, in the Republic, coins the term dialectic to refer to a form of division in dialogue and a method of undermining assumptions to determine first principles and truth. So, with a kind of pattern forming here, incidentally, it should come as no surprise that Plato's dialectique has informed our studies of dialectics, which is the art of investigating or discussing the truth of opinions. Ooh, it all comes together. So, a more scholarly understanding of art criticism, obviously including video games, should be an attempt to grasp some form of truth, whatever that may be, Criticism, therefore, is an attempt to understand and engage with art. So that is one question answered. So now we know what criticism is, and we even understand some aspect of its purpose too. It is our primary method of interacting with art to gain an understanding, to gain some kind of truth or knowledge which makes sense, especially when you consider that epistemology is the study of the nature of knowledge. Now, before we carry on, I do want to add one thing. You see, it's easy to hear those definitions of criticism and come to the conclusion that when I say finding truth, I mean to say that there is one objective and correct answer to the question of a piece of art, and I want to say right now, up front, unequivocally, that that is not true. I think it is important that I make this known right now. There are limits to scholarly pursuits, and it is here that we come up to one such limit: human bias. We are all biased. If you think you aren't, congratulations, you discovered one way in which you are biased. You're incredibly blinkered. We all have things we value, and our different experiences and inborn proclivities shape the way our biases grow and change throughout our lives. So when we engage with a piece of art, we are meshing and repelling the biases of the artist with our own, and thus we have to find our own truth, whatever that may be. To go back to dialectics for a second, one thing I glossed over was that these truths of opinions are found through discussion. Discussion of player with game and player with player. That is kind of the point of art, I think. If there is anything I want people to take away from this video, it is that objective reviews do not exist, and there are as many truths in art as there are people. But back to the main discussion, our final question. Why is there a divide between professionals and hobbyists? As I stated before, everyone is a critic, but as we are increasingly discovering, the further we broaden our understanding of human nature, most things, like sexuality, political leanings, and gender expression, being a critic exists on a spectrum. I myself, by existing in such a capacity, am somewhere between professional and hobbyist. I would like to be paid for the work I put in while sharing my opinion, but that's still a ways off. But by taking this initiative, I am leaving behind the comforts of being just a hobbyist and making myself seen and vulnerable. Full-time professional critics, even more so. They have a backlog of work available and are easily identifiable, whereas Joe Schmo on Twitter doesn't and isn't. I think this is the first thing we must acknowledge when discussing professional anythings against hobbyists. Being a professional comes with inherent risks and rewards. There are also many responsibilities and pressures. A recent video by Alana Pierce discussing this aspect of being a critic impressed one thing upon me. Critics are more afraid of the public rather than publishers. Can you imagine that? Saying you like a game and then having someone on Twitter post your address and say they're going to kill you. I, what? I mean, that. Oh my god, that is just so insane. I can't even wrap my mind around it. I cannot stress how fiendish it is. And this is the reason why I find it so difficult whenever I hear people try to defend the gaming public. You're coming to the table with that, you've already lost. At that point, the conversation is no longer about the game. Obviously, I know that hobbyists are not a monolith. People doxing a critic does not mean the general public approves of such behavior. But I think we can do more. I think we need to do better at supporting creators and like punishing these people who do this. I don't know what form that should take, whether it's some kind of ostracization, banning them from Twitter or wherever. I don't know. But if you disagree with people doing this kind of thing, you owe it to our culture to intervene, report that person, get the tweet taken down, just speak out against it every single time. Don't make concessions. There needs to be an overwhelming outpouring every time it happens because the consequences outweigh the catharsis of blowing up at someone because of their opinion. All that being said, of course, critics are not blameless either, mind you. Their blame is not to the level of death threats and intimidation. I'm not gonna paint this as a there's blame on both sides. One side is more wrong than the other in this case. Death threats to voice actors and critics have no equal and opposite crime from the other side. But that is not to say that the reasonable and rational hobbyists don't have a legitimate point to make. So, how about we separate the wheat from the chaff, okay? Alright, real time. Critics are. Like professionals at the very least. We're egomaniacs. I think that's fair to say. We're also very sensitive. It takes a certain kind of personality to want to rise out of the hobbyist cluster and claim to be what is essentially a community leader or influencer. Not even going to beat around the bush, I am definitely one of those kinds of people. Overly opinionated, wants to argue all the things all the time. Professional critics, no matter what they say, need to have some of these qualities to do their job. However, it can backfire greatly, and with an art form like video game, critics are especially aware of how they are still sometimes perceived by other critics from more established mediums, and to say it doesn't completely get to them, I think would also be a lie. The obvious example of such an inferiority complex comes up with statements like, in a medium where everything is John Wick, The Last of Us Part 2 is Schindler's List. No, no, stop. You want to know what is the Schindler's List of anything? Schindler's List. There is no Citizen Kane of gaming. There is no Schindler's List of gaming. There is no movie or book equivalent of Dark Souls. There is no sock puppet theater version of Plants vs. Zombies. Each medium produces its own great works, which stand as pillars of what that medium can achieve. Earlier, I said I hated cinematic games, and this is why. They are so easy. Not in terms of difficulty, mind you, though they are often guilty of that as well. But they try so desperately hard to be like films, to be real art. Praising them is just easy. All critics want to be taken seriously, and that means you have to talk about serious things, and video games are just children's toys, right? No one is going to take you seriously, right? Wrong. The game buying public takes you seriously. I think the pros get caught up in the pageantry of art so far that they forget their own role. Siskel and Ebert. That's a segue. They aren't remembered and idolized so fondly because of some pretension to art. They were so beloved because they were two goofballs that loved talking about movies. They had a body of knowledge between them because they dedicated themselves to just watching so many movies that they spoke film as a second language, and they were good at translating themselves back into common. So much so that they were equal parts education and entertainment. That brings me to another distinction between hobbyists and professional gamers: time investment. Typically, a hobbyist picks and chooses the games they play. Gaming for them, as the name implies, is a hobby. Astute deduction, I am well aware. Thank you, thank you. It is something to partake in during leisure time, as a break from other life obligations. With pros, however, they are expected to play every new release in some capacity. Gaming is one of their life obligations, and as much as they want to deny it, that does create a rift in priorities. Professionals should, I think, as part of their job, be competent at playing the games they review. Difficulty in games is one of those touchy subjects, but I think White Light's video on the matter more than sufficiently covers what I could ever say. Difficulty, one way or another, like level design, like mechanics, and so on, is a tool in the designer's belt or their toolkit. No one wants Animal Crossing Souls, and no one should want an easy mode in Sekiro. The argument goes both ways. I'll stop there because I want to stay on topic, but what even is the topic? I mean, I kind of rambled on about criticism and the nature, but why? What am I doing this for? Because I think there needs to be more honest discussion around this. The Last of Us Part 2 is not the first, and it won't be the last time such a rift is created between the extremes of the gaming spectrum. I think understanding the nature of criticism and its function is important. I think my function as someone who has no investment in The Last of Us can help bring a less conventional third faction to the fore. People just appreciate the effort that the devs put in. Because they tried. Like, hell, I think, if we're being honest, they tried too hard because they were forced into intense crunch periods. It's not fair, I think, what people are doing to this game. The critics and the hobbyists. No game is perfect. And this game has received some genuine criticism that needs to be considered against the fact that they did try something narratively new, using the medium in an exciting and new way. Typically, when we are exposed to different perspectives in a game, both are ideologically aligned in some way. They're only different mechanically in how they move or attack, assuming they're different at all. Obviously, parallel storytelling is not new to games. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 were doing this way back when. But the scale and ambition and narrative implication and direct attempt to form an empathetic link is what is new. It's commendable, I think, success or failure. Remember all the way back to the top of this? I said to tuck away the layers of manipulation for later. Well, congratulations, you big brain smarty pants, you did it. You get the payoff right here at the end. I think one valid criticism of the story of The Last of Us 2 is that its revenge narrative is too simple without much else going on. Its truth is laid so bare it appears garish to most players. They stake so much of the design in wanting to make you see both sides of the argument, they failed at the complexity, the layers of manipulation, if you will. There's nothing to work through. That is a valid criticism of the game, and many of its opponents do make it, and I want that to be part of the discussion as well. But I think I've gone on for long enough. I really want people to listen to what the other side has to say. Obviously, people making bigoted claims can just be ignored like this. That's fine. But there are genuine criticisms to this game, and there are genuine artistic merits that are being brought up to this game as well. And both sides do make valid points. So please, everybody, just try and listen to each other. I promise it'll be for the betterment of our culture as a whole.